I've done a few different videos over the years where I talked about what might make somebody a good therapist, especially for people who are healing from childhood trauma. And today I want to talk about what might make somebody a bad therapist. And this one is pretty important. Welcome. I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thank you for joining me. I was a little hesitant to do this video. For a few different reasons, but I think it's really important, given where we are, because we are not in normal times, and there are a lot of things that are becoming really clear. So first, I want to start by talking just kind of at a high level what makes somebody a good therapist. Now, there's a lot of nuance to this, and what is a good therapist for one person may not be for another one. And I'll share, hopefully I can find the videos. I'll share the links below for a couple of those videos that I've done previously. But I think it's important to just kind of have a little bit of an understanding. So there is a clinical aspect of being a therapist. So before I start with all of that, let me first say, first of all, this is my opinion. All of this is my opinion as somebody who has been in the field of social work and doing therapy for, at this point, 25 and plus years, particularly as a social worker. I am no longer doing clinical therapy. I do my work now as a mentor. I allowed my clinical license to retire when I took my work online. So I've been in the field for a very long time. And my undergraduate and graduate degrees are in social work. So that is what I am basing my opinions on. So, two kind of different pieces that make somebody on a high level a good therapist: clinical training and experience. So that is stuff that's related to specific like methods and experience in doing those methods and understanding the clinical implications of different types of experiences and diagnoses and that type of thing. So there's kind of the more boring stuff related to that. But that's one aspect of it. And then there is another aspect that I think a lot of people don't necessarily pay as much attention to. And that is more related to understanding kind of the psychology of being human and the sociological aspect of being human. And what I mean by that is that we may have specific struggles or issues or even a diagnosis that requires certain clinical skills and understanding and methods and that sort of thing, right? But within the struggles and issues and experiences that we have, there's a lot of complexity to them, right? Layers. There's a lot of contributing factors. There's a lot of things within our lived everyday experiences that affect those things that we might be seeing a therapist for. So I've mentioned this before, but in social work, for example, from very basic level social work stuff, we talk about person and environment. And what that means is that no matter what our role as a social worker is, so whether we are working as a school social worker or in child welfare or hospital social work or justice social work, so incarcerated folks, or clinicians, people doing therapy. There's all kinds of social work that we can do. Whatever role we have as a social worker, we may have a client. If we're doing micro social work, we may have a client, but that client exists in an environment. And that environment is made up of systems. And I've talked about this in different ways before. And so all of those systems play a role in how this person is affected, resources, and all of those kinds of things. And so I'm talking about this obviously from a social work perspective. Other professions, I think, go about it a little bit differently, but they still have some understanding of that. But the way that they learn about it might be a little bit different because social work roles do vary a lot more. So having an understanding of all of that is really important. Additionally, recognizing within every profession, I also want to make it clear, a little side note here. Every profession, let me back up. I am speaking about therapists within the United States. I can't speak to other countries. Every country does things very differently. And so all of what I'm saying is specific to the US. There may be a lot of overlap with other countries in some aspects, but I don't know how other countries do it. So within the US, no matter what degree somebody might have, no matter what their license might be, there's a code of ethics that they have to follow. And within that code of ethics, I'm pretty confident that every code of ethics, so whether you're a marriage and family therapist, an addiction therapist, a professional counselor, certainly social work, I feel like I'm forgetting a couple there. But anyway, whatever you might be, within your code of ethics, most of them now have things related to human rights or social justice, equality, something related to that. Within social work, we do have things very specific to human rights, equality, social justice, dignity of the person, and systems, those kinds of things. So all of that is part of our code of ethics, no matter what our role in social work is. And in the United States, social workers are the majority of people who provide clinical therapy within the United States. I'm pretty sure that's still the case, which seems kind of surprising. But anyway, so when you have an understanding, so you've got the clinical training, education, experience, and you have this other understanding as a high level thing that can make somebody a good therapist. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other things that make somebody a good therapist that are important, but these things have to be present. They have to be present in order for somebody to be able to be a good therapist. So then what makes somebody a bad therapist? Now, there was a time when if somebody were to ask me what makes somebody a bad therapist, I would have said, well, if they breach really significant codes of ethics types of things, if they're sleeping with a client, that would be horrible. And that would be a bad therapist. Like that would be the top of the list. And there's other types of things, but it would have to be something pretty egregious to make that person a bad therapist. And it's kind of black and white in that regard. Some people might say another person is a bad therapist, where other people might say that that's not really a bad therapist. Maybe it's not the best idea, but it doesn't necessarily make them a bad therapist. So there's room for conversation. There's room for nuance, potentially, those kinds of things. I think we are in a place where there's an aspect that there is no room for nuance, that it's pretty clear. And I want to explain why. because I think it's important to understand this. I think it's important for people seeking therapy. And I know that there are a lot of people who watch my videos who are going to school to be in this field, and people who are already in this field. And I know that in part because sometimes people will leave comments, but I've also had people reach out to me, and I've done consultation with some people. And I know if that's the case, then there's probably even more that are watching. So if it's true that in order to be a good therapist, you have to have this understanding, this recognition of how people are affected by things around them, that a person may come to you because they're stressed out at work, but you have to look at that person within the context of the systems that they're in. If we have an understanding of that, then when somebody comes to us, we have an awareness of what is happening in the systems around them at this current time, in order to be able to best help them, right? Now, of course, in normal times, we're not always going to have awareness of every single thing that's going on in everybody's life and everything that they're involved in, right? And we can't be expected to. But say you live in a community and there is a string of home invasions in a particular neighborhood, and you have a client who you happen to know lives in that neighborhood. If that client comes in and they're talking about not being able to sleep at night, and you know there's a string of robberies, home invasions in this neighborhood, then if this client is talking about not being able to get to sleep at night, and they're seeing on the news, or they heard on the news, and maybe they even say it in kind of a passing way, you can then say, you can talk about that. You can acknowledge the reality of what that means. You can talk about how to maybe unwind a little bit, do some things that are very intentional and specific to help them get to a place to where maybe they can feel a little bit safer in their home, right? But if you don't recognize that, if you don't see the impact that that could have on them, if you think that while they're coming here because of work stress, they're not coming here because of stuff in their neighborhood, so I'm just going to focus on their work stress, then you're not supporting them in the best way that you could, right? So you're in a sense, it's generally under normal circumstances, you're not necessarily being a bad therapist, but you're not necessarily helping them in the best way that you could otherwise, right? So the reality is, not only are we not in normal times, we are in times when there is major upheaval around us. There are major norms that are being trampled all over. There are people being murdered in the streets. There are untrained, masked individuals, heavily armed people roaming in the streets. The leader of what was the most powerful country in the world is not being held accountable for massive, incredible crimes that he is committing. These are not normal times. People are afraid. Even if one person, even if my client is not afraid, their partner might be, their best friend might be, and they're talking to them, their child might be. Or maybe they don't recognize that they're afraid, but maybe some of their symptoms would indicate otherwise. But if I'm not aware of how things going on around us might be impacting them, I might miss their irritability with their partner as feeling stressed out and powerless. I might just play it out as, yeah, they're irritated with their partner and their partner needs to step up. And yeah, maybe it is that their partner needs to step up. But it's also important to recognize what else might be going on. How are you taking care of yourself through this? Are you watching a lot of news? There's a lot of things that we have to be able to consider. And as I've said before in previous videos, even if you're not really engaged in the things that are going on, even if you're trying not to pay attention, you are being affected. And the reason that I decided to do this video is because I have been actually really surprised and appalled at some of the things that I have seen by other therapists, things that they've written, because by the things that they are writing, they cannot be a good therapist to their client. Even if their client agrees with them and thinks that everything that is happening right now is perfectly okay and reasonable. Because those people are still being affected by what is happening, especially when you consider that the majority of people who think that everything is okay right now are being negatively affected. Health insurance, financially with the economy, food prices, like so many different things, family issues because people are no longer speaking to them. People are affected no matter what side you happen to be on. Everybody is being negatively affected by what is going on. There is no way that you cannot be. Now, of course, if it matters to you, you're going to be more affected. If you feel like this is a problem, you're going to be more aware that you're affected. But the things that I have seen people say truly has been appalling, and these people should not be therapists. And I want to just give you a little bit of an example of, and this is ultimately kind of what led me here. And this isn't even necessarily the worst thing that I've seen, but it was recent, and it just really made me angry. Because a therapist had come into a group looking for support because her child, young elementary age child, was scared at school, and she was looking for support in kind of things that she could do. And somebody commented, we'll call him Scott because that is his name. Scott commented very briefly, excuse me, initially, and I don't remember what the first part was, but something along the lines of like, CBT, that's not what he said, but CBT is really effective for cognitive distortions like catastrophizing. So this woman is concerned about her son. She's concerned about what's happening. She's not quite sure how to help her son. And she's worried as well. And in a therapy support group, so it's a group for therapists to have support. Scott, who is purportedly a therapist, says, obviously very dismissive, that these modes of therapy are good for cognitive distortions like catastrophizing. So basically saying the mom and the kid are catastrophizing. And catastrophizing is when there's no need to be afraid of something, right? There are a lot of reasons to be afraid right now. A lot. And not just about the immigration, not just about ICE killing innocent people. And I commented, well, I had a lot that I wanted to say. I just said, I hope you never work with the DV or SA survivors, domestic violence or sexual assault survivors. And he commented back saying, but those are different because they're not basically fear-mongering, politically motivated things or something along that line. So this man, Scott, in a therapy support group, completely minimizes and dismisses this person and their son, their concerns, very real concerns. And he makes it political and just kind of goes on from there. And he ended up writing a comment after somebody replied to one of my comments that I made, just acknowledging that this man, Scott, is an ass, basically. And Scott commented back to him with something that was pretty lewd, and so much so that either he decided to delete it or potentially a moderator deleted it. He said he didn't delete it, so he felt like it was perfectly reasonable to leave it up if that is the case, but a moderator decided to delete it. So this man, again, is a therapist. This man is seeing clients. What kind of clients? I don't know. I don't know what he specializes in. But I can guarantee that his clients, at least some of them, part of what they are struggling with is related to stuff that is happening in our country right now in some regard. Based on what I saw, it seems that he has children. And I believe he has daughters. I saw a picture that said girl dad. This man is not a safe person to be seeing, especially as a survivor, especially as a woman. But I would argue is not a good person to be seeing, period. And he's not the only one. He is not the only one. There have been many that I have seen who are so dismissive, sometimes are cruel in the things that they say, in their dismissiveness about what is happening, about the reality of the loss of life around abortion rights, the women who have died as a result of not getting the medical care that they've needed. These are not normal times. And anybody who supports this administration, anyone who thinks that anything that is happening within this administration, given all that is going on, if they are not able to see the damage, the destruction that it is doing to the people in our communities, all the people, some in different ways, if they are not able to see that, if they are not able to understand that, and sure as hell, if they're not able to have compassion for that, they are not a good therapist. And I know I'm going to be pissing some people off when I say that, but that is the reality as far as I am concerned. Am I being judgmental about that? You damn right. Absolutely. I am being judgmental about that. Does it mean that they do not have the capacity to become a good therapist? No. If they decide to wake up one day and recognize how wrong they are, if they decide to do the work to understand the damage that they've caused, then yes, it's possible. But not while they think that what is happening is okay. So what do? Ask. If you are searching for somebody, and this is true wherever you live in the world, ask, how do you feel about what's happening? What are your thoughts on this? And you can ask about it, maybe a specific thing that matters to you. Whatever that thing might be. Do you believe survivors? How do you feel? I mean, this is in the US, but it's talked about all over the world. How do you feel about the Epstein list? Like, there's different questions that you can ask. You can ask, who did you vote for? You can ask. And if somebody does not want to answer, that is your indicator to move on. Now, there was a time before 2016, there was a time before then that I would not have felt so strongly about that. That if a therapist did not necessarily immediately tell you who they voted for, that they would have been a bad therapist. I would not have said that they were a bad therapist. I don't know that I necessarily even would have said that you should move on immediately. Because there was a time that it might make sense that, depending on kind of how you were taught, what your leaning is towards how you do your clinical work, that it might make sense that you wouldn't do that necessarily right up front, tell somebody who you voted for. But we are not in normal times. We're just not. So ask about the things that matter to you, no matter what you're going to see somebody for. Ask how they feel about human rights. Ask if they feel like reproductive care is human rights. Ask if they think that children being locked in a cage when their parents took them to a new country is a reasonable thing to do. Ask if they think everybody should have access to health care. Ask if they think food should be accessible to everybody. Like, whatever matters to you. And if they're not willing to tell you, or if they tell you that somehow, in a way that somehow supports this administration, they cannot be a good therapist. If you are seeing somebody who you're not sure of, and you have a good relationship with that person and you feel like you're being helped, I'm not going to suggest that you need to stop working with that person. I would say that if you have ever questioned your working relationship with that person, if you've ever wondered or felt like maybe this person didn't quite get it or something to that effect, ask. Because a lot of times people have a feeling about something, but they don't necessarily feel like they can ask a question, or they feel like they're making too big of a deal out of it. So you can ask. And if you know where that person leans and you still feel like you have a good relationship with them, I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't see them. If it feels like it's working for you and you're getting what you feel like you need from it, and it feels like you're moving in the direction you want to move, and you're feeling lighter and more free, then continue to work with them. I will say, though, that I think that you're probably going to at some point need to work with somebody else at some point in order to get the full healing that you deserve. Because I absolutely believe that anybody who would vote in somebody who is a sexual predator does not fully understand the reality of what that actually means, to think it's okay to vote in a sexual predator. So there's that. But so if you happen to be, I believe that he practices in Michigan. I don't know where in Michigan, but if you're looking for a therapist and Scott comes up on your radar, feel free to reach out to me and I'll let you know if it's the Scott I'm aware of, because I definitely would not recommend seeing him. So thanks for being here. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Let me know what you think. I know that this has the potential to not sit well with some people, and I get that, but I also believe that it is important for people to understand the significance of what this time means, and the reality of the work that we do, and how we perceive the world individually as humans, how we perceive things, and the impact that that has on the work that we do. And we have a responsibility. We have such an enormous responsibility to have awareness of all the different kinds of things as much as we can, to understand the impact of things, and things that we don't understand, to recognize that, oh, I didn't think that that might affect somebody in that way, not suggest that they're catastrophizing about it, because those are very different things. Thanks so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you next time.